Thanks for everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that there's two ways that you can actually help me continue the fight against bullying in the public schools. First, if you haven't subscribed to the Bully Resistance Show, it doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org, and you'll see the banner and that says subscribe, and all you have to do is just click on that. The second way that you can help, you can be a monthly sponsor as low as $4 per month, and in return, you're going to get a free weekly digital download of a track of mine or a song of mine from the CDs that I have out, and also a monthly digital download CD. Now this way, you're not just giving money away, but you're getting something in return. So all you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org, scroll down and click on the Patreon banner, and it's going to take you to get you or to give you some more information about that. So with no further ado, sit back and enjoy the next Bully Resistance Show. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Parkersburg Jiu-Jitsu, a Pedro Sauer affiliate located in Vienna, West Virginia. Go to parkersburgbjj.com, or you can call 740-591-2706. And if you mention the Bully Resistance Show, you're going to receive 2 free weeks of training in self-defense and also a private lesson from one of our instructors. Restrictions do apply. The Bully Resistance Show is brought to you by Planet Fitness, located in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and Marietta, Ohio. They strive to create a workout environment where everyone feels accepted and respected. That's why at Planet Fitness in Parkersburg and Marietta, they take care to make sure their club is clean and welcoming. Their staff is friendly. There's certified trainers. Everything's there. So whether you're a first-time gym user or a fitness veteran, you'll always have a home in their judgment-free zone.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells, nationally known smooth jazz artist, CEO and co-founder of the Chocolate Jazz Foundation, and the co-host of a 2-hour syndicated radio program called Chocolate Jazz Radio. Bully Resistance is a weekly 1-hour show that's a motivational, informative, and inspirational program. We will have interviews with musicians, actors, government officials, politicians, psychologists, counselors, and just average day citizens. Of course, the topics will include making right choices, never giving up desire, discipline, determination, bullying in public school, the workplace, and in your community, bully resistance and prevention, self-defense, jiu-jitsu, and current affairs, and much, much more. And if you're ready, we are. Here's your host, David Wells.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. My name is David, and today we have a former principal from the Middle Ohio Valley that just retired last year, not for sure, but at this time I want to introduce Richard Summers on the Bully Resistance Show. Richard, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wells. I appreciate the call, and I look forward to sharing some thoughts with you today.
Well, good. Now, so is this your first year as someone retired, or did you retire a couple years ago?
I retired at the end of last year, and at the end of last year, made 37 years in education. Okay. It was my 19th year finishing up at Jackson.
Whoa.
And it just, the timing, I still had a passion for what I was doing, but the time just seemed to be right to start the next phase of my life called retirement.
Well, that's good. Listen, before we get started, I always ask to the interviewee if they can give us a little bit more information about yourself and your family and where you were born and raised and your education. Can you do that?
Sure. Well, I was actually born in Orlando, Florida. My dad was in the military there. He was a serviceman.
Okay.
And I would live there till I was about 2 or 3 years old. And my parents moved to Logan, West Virginia. And we were there for probably 2 years, and eventually they moved into New Martinsville, West Virginia.
Now
I attended school there till I was in the 6th grade.
Right.
Moved to Sistersville, West Virginia, and basically I've been a lifelong resident of the Ohio Valley ever since then. I've been married to the same lady, wonderful lady, for 38 years.
Nice.
I've got a son and a daughter. They're both physical therapists. One of them works at Camden Clark in Parkersburg, and the other one works in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
Proud grandparents of 3 granddaughters and 1 grandson, which certainly also played a role in the timing being right to retire. Graduated from Sistersville High School, which no longer exists in Sistersville, West Virginia.
Okay.
Went to Concord University, and I pursued my education at University of Dayton, where I got my master's degree, and I went on to get the master's and a plus 45 beyond that. I've certified in elementary, middle, and high school principal, certified in curriculum, superintendent certification. And like I said, it's 38 years in education, and the timing was just right to start some other things in retirement. And it's not been a year yet, but anybody listening that has an opportunity to retire, I can certainly say it's worth the wait.
You know what? So you've actually was the principal for Jackson for 19 years, then, right?
Yes, I was actually the head principal for 17 years, and I worked for 2 years as the assistant principal under a wonderful principal named Richard Board.
Okay.
I think he spent most of his career there, and he was a fantastic leader of the school. And after 2 years, he turned 55, and he had some military service that he could count towards retirement. And at that point, he decided it was time to retire. And I pondered the idea on whether or not I wanted to be the head principal for a period of time, and finally decided that I had enough love and passion for Jackson Middle School, which is Jackson Junior High at the time, that I decided I would take that on. And it was I can honestly say it was a wonderful 17 years as head principal, and the time passed all too quickly.
You know what? I'm partial with Jackson Junior High, just because that was my last place I went to school before we moved to Dallas, Texas. As a matter of fact, Richard, Mr. Board was my band teacher. And of course you knew that, and I think what's good about this is that I know you more than I know most principals, because you've had me at your school a couple times doing the assemblies on bullying and about making right choices, and so I know that you have a passion of, with the kids, and especially with this problem. Let me ask you this. In regards to Jackson Middle School, from the time that you started as a principal to the day you retired, do you feel, your honest opinion, do you feel that bullying has got worse, or do you feel it's getting better?
Well, remember that 17 years, actually 19 years at the same school. That's a span of quite a few years, and
sure,
almost 2 decades, and hundreds of different kids that have gone through there at that time. And not only had schools changed in that period of time, but society and everything else had changed during that time as well.
Right.
And I can't say that it's an issue that has multiplied tenfold, but it is certainly an issue that I do feel has gotten worse from the time that I began until the time that I had finished up there. And part of the reason is technology, and technology had changed. And
sure,
when I first began, if students had an issue with each other, you always had the wonderful weekend that came into play, and kids would not be in, they weren't in school,
right? And
things would just kind of diffuse over the weekend, or if it was a holiday break, it certainly would diffuse. But with technology and social media, more often than not, things escalate over the weekend because they're not in school. they're on their phones, they're having conversations, they're name calling, or somebody's receiving negative texts and tweets and that kind of thing.
Sure.
So the weekend, it doesn't go away. So then you come back to school on Monday, and it's the first time they've been face-to-face, and sometimes you'll have an argument or an issue, but technology and social media is something that's not only impacting kids at school, it impacts movie stars, professional athletes, politicians. The power of the phone and social media is so easy to sit down and send something out and hit send before you've thought about it. And whatever you've sent has negatively impacted the person on the other end. And some of it's intentional, but a lot of times it's not even intentional that you've caused somebody to...
Oh, I know.
You've hurt their feelings or made them feel bad about themselves or whatever. So, yeah, in the period of 20 years, it certainly has gotten worse. And I think
the technology,
for sure, the people are more aware of it. They're more educated on it, and that sort of thing.
Let me and I agree with you there. And I was actually online, and I was actually on the WVEA.org, and Wallet Hub survey by Richie Bernardo shows that West Virginia is ranked number 3 in the bullying problems. So we know that really technology is a big factor why bullying has spiked so high, but still we're number 3. And that being said, do you feel that really, I mean, I love West Virginia, and it's a great place to go ahead and raise kids, but in actuality, there's not that many things to do. And when you don't, you're probably like you said, you're on your phone a lot more. And then I know that with me, I mean, there's been times I'm not the best person to relate on texting, and I know that I could probably offend somebody, and I had no intentions to. And I think when you are separated, like you said, over the weekend, your emotions get high and you just get all riled up, and when you see them, you sort of explode. And but why do you still think that West Virginia is still up there in regards to the most bullying problems then?
Well, I can honestly say I wasn't aware that West Virginia is, what'd you say, number 3 or whatever.
Yeah, but there's so many surveys out there, and they fluctuate. And without a doubt, bullying is not just a West Virginia problem. It is a national problem. As far as West Virginia being number 3, I don't have an answer for that. It just might be a perception that people have. If you wanted to do a more in-depth study or detailed study, perhaps it's tied to the fact that we have so much poverty in our state. In some schools, you may have issues of, the two different groups where kids who have a lot and kids who don't have hardly anything are put in the same cafeteria together. And I really don't know why West Virginia would be proportionately so much farther than the rest of the state or the rest of the country. I mean, I don't either. I would be curious to get a more in-depth, survey and how they figure all that out myself. Right.
A lot of that would determine, what are the questions I asked, what's the, how's the survey set up and what have you. But, number 3, that's a concern. Yeah. Now, this podcast today it's a little different because I've actually put it on social media, and I've got a lot of questions, and I wanted to send those to you because I think some of these questions you sort of have to weigh them out a little bit because they're parents that are really emotionally involved with their kids, and their emotions are really high, and there's always two sides to the story, and I realize that, and I know that the teachers and administration, I'm their biggest fan, and when I do these assemblies, I really stress that these teachers, I'll tell you this. When I was in middle school, and I can say this, when Mr. Board was my band teacher, I honestly felt that he wanted to see me succeed
to be the best musician possible. I believe that he gave me more time, he gave me more attention, but I also put a lot of time in practicing, and I knew where I wanted to be. And so I honestly think that the teachers want to see the kids be successful, and they also are there to protect us. So that being said, I want to go ahead and ask you a few questions that I got from Facebook, and then you can sort of just elaborate however you feel. This first question was, it says, my son has been getting bullied, and when I talk to the principal or the teacher, things seem to get better, but then after time, it starts back up. If you were me or a parent, what steps would you take to stop the bullying?
That sounds like a parent that has an awful lot on their plate, and I can certainly empathize with. I'm a parent of 2 kids, and my kids had experienced some situations that were uncomfortable for them when they were in school, and there's nothing that hits you in the heart or in the gut as much as your kid coming home and feeling bad because of something that happened at school along those lines. And now I've got a granddaughter who's in the 1st grade, and she has already experienced some situations that didn't make her feel good, and she comes home and she tells her mother, and she's upset, and it's just even worse as a grandparent when you hear about these things.
I can't imagine.
But as a parent, there's I have a couple of thoughts on that. And one thing I think that parents need to understand is that when your child is in school, not everyone is going to like your child, and that's just
right.
That's just a fact. Not everybody likes me. Not everybody likes my wife. Maybe everybody likes you. I don't know.
No, they don't. I'm finding that out.
If your child is in a class with 25 people, 25 kids, and 20 of them may get along and think the world of your son or daughter, but there might be 5 they're just not friends. They're just different.
Sure.
And if one of those has a birthday party and they don't invite your son or daughter, that's not bullying. That's just human nature. Everybody's not always going to like somebody, and I know it hurts feelings, and the kid might come home from school and be upset about it, but that's just life. And as a parent, you need to make sure your children understand that you've got friends, you're a good person, you've got a lot going for you. It's just a birthday party, and it just so happened that you didn't get invited, and that's not bullying, and it's not the end of the world.
Right.
And I think parents need to understand, as much as anything, how big social media is with children. This generation of kids, it is the most connected group of people in the history of civilization. These kids are connected with kids in their school, kids in other schools, kids across the country, kids all over the world. They are connected through social media.
Right.
But despite the fact that it is the most connected group of people in the history of the world, they are the loneliest group of people in the world.
Yeah.
Because they have friends on Facebook and they get the likes and all that, and because of that doesn't mean that they are socially happy, that they are as happy as maybe we were when we were little kids without social media.
Right.
And parents also need to understand that all the harm that can come from social media. And all parents have a different opinion on this, but as a parent, I was involved in what my children were doing on social media. I checked their phone. If it was a computer, I stayed involved in that.
Good.
I wanted to know what was going in and out of my house and what was affecting my children. Now, as a school principal, there were times when I would encourage the parents to do that, and some would tell me they do and that they lock this out and they were involved. But there were quite a few who would tell me that was a violation of their children's privacy, and they weren't going to get involved in that. Well, that's a choice. But sadly or unfortunately, a lot of this takes place in the evenings. Mom and dad's in bed. Kids are in their bedroom. It could be midnight. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning. And they could be texting or receiving texts or doing things on the computer that ultimately are going to affect their social and mental well-being. And I think parents need to be actively involved in monitoring what's taking place with that.
Right. I agree.
So, I mean, those are two things that I think are extremely important, for parents to look at.
Okay. Let me ask you this. It's over the years that you've been principal, what changes have been made to reduce the bullying in public schools? See, when I do school assemblies, I can tell the updates with security, going into a school and different things, and I sort of was wondering about this myself, about the changes that have been made, and especially since we're talking technology and cyberbullying. I mean, really, how can you go ahead and reduce the amount of bullying? It really, I think, Richard, it really has to be the parents, don't you think?
I think a lot of it does start with the parents and the things that I just mentioned, and their willingness to talk with their children and get involved. But certainly from a school standpoint and a school system standpoint, compared to when I was in school, there was really not a lot of discussion on bullying, and if there was a fight in school, it was the boys will be boys. Now you guys, you break it up. The gym teacher would break you up, and then you'd shake hands and say you're sorry, and there might not have even been any disciplinary action over it.
Right.
But times have certainly changed, and whereas none of that is tolerated. And like you said, technology. At the school that I left, we had cameras in the gymnasium. We had cameras in every hallway, cameras in computer labs, cameras in the cafeteria, virtually anywhere except for the restrooms and the dressing rooms.
Right.
So you did have an opportunity to monitor things and use those as a preventative tool, and also to prove if there was bullying or not taking place.
Right.
We've seen an increase of people who are willing to devote time and energy to help schools who are limited on funding.
Right.
To deal with bullying. People like yourself. I know while I was there, you did at least 2, maybe even 3 assemblies, which was very well received by the kids and the teachers and the parents who attended. Those are messages and things that go to children that's not coming from a teacher or a principal, but coming from somebody from the outside that has does a lot towards helping to reduce bullying. And we've got we've got programs such as Rachel's Challenge, where students can take a pledge and sign off on that they are not going to be bullied. One of the things I was most proud about at Jackson is we had a program where every day, to start the day, every student started the day in their homeroom, and we had a program where we taught students about all kinds of social issues, from drugs to alcohol,
really,
to hot and cold responses to situations. And that would involve sometimes a video, sometimes it would be worksheets, sometimes it would be just discussions between the students and the teacher. But we didn't expect kids to just know how to respond. Our approach was we wanted to teach them how to handle these things and teach them what are the negative effects of bullying and how might you respond to bullying. And we wanted the kids also to know what is bullying, because a lot of, because it's such a hot topic, and because parents see it on the news and we see about the shootings and the suicides.
Right.
Sometimes the word bullying has gotten to be misused.
I agree.
And when we want the kids to know that if you're a 6th grader in the hallway and the classes are changing and an 8th grader is not paying any attention and bumps into you, it's a one-time event.
Right.
That's not bullying. That's an accident. That's what happens when a group of people are moving together.
Right.
But sometimes that would happen. The student would perceive it as bullying, go home and tell the parents, they see it as bullying. That's just an accident. You know, kids moving in the hallway, and we want them to know that that's not bullying. Bullying is something that is an event that takes place over a period of time, continuously, or certainly more direct than somebody bumping into them at the hallway. And that we had a lot of positive come out of this program. In fact, 2 years ago, it was a state-recognized program at the state level for teaching kids how to handle things.
Right.
And then, and we didn't just leave it with, at the student level. We had a no bullying contract with teachers. And we worked with teachers, and sometimes it would be just on continuing education. It was always something mentioned at the opening meeting of the school year, and then revisited as the school year went along, because teachers have a lot on their plate, and we certainly know that. I mean, they have so many challenges, but none more important than how they handle a student who might feel like they were bullying. And just to be an example, we want kids to feel comfortable going to an adult to report a situation. So if a student went to whoever they felt most comfortable with at the school, and often it was their homeroom teacher who has led them in these conversations, then we expected that teacher at that moment to take action, to talk to the other student who was accused of bullying, talk to both of them together, contact a parent, but some action was to take place at that time, as opposed to the student reporting it to a teacher and the teacher saying, oh, okay, well, you need to go see the principal. Certainly the principal wanted to see kids, but kids didn't always want to go directly to the principal. They wanted that adult to offer help at that time.
Sure.
And that made a big impact as far as, students feeling comfortable with reporting bullying. But it is an ongoing emphasis at all schools, and I don't see any time in the future where this will ever go away. It's just that important.
Right. One of the things specifically in elementary schools, when I do an assembly there, that's one thing that I do stress and talk about a lot. What bullies are, but then what is bullying? And I always tell them, I'm in a family of 7 brothers and sisters, and oftentimes, we would pick and fight and everything else, and sometimes I would bring the issues to school, and I would say something mean to somebody, but it would be a one-time thing. And so we all have bad days, and we all say things. And you know what? To go back what we were talking about, I don't remember when I was going into Jackson, I don't remember the word bullying. I remember maybe picking on or teasing somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think it's just one of those things. But let me move on real quickly. I saw a statistic a few places where it says 85% of all bullying, there's no intervention. Do you think that the reason why this is so high is because the kids that are getting bullied aren't letting their parents or teachers know, or do you feel like there's another reason?
Well, it would be difficult for me to grasp onto the fact that 85% nothing has taken place.
Okay.
If that is the case, it would be my guess is that students a lot of times are reluctant to report issues to people who can solve the problem.
Right.
I would often say that, we always had class assemblies to start the school year where I would meet with the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade separately. And one of the things I would tell them is, you have a right to be happy at Jackson Middle School. And if somebody is doing something that is causing an issue with you, you can either come to see me, and I would introduce our resource officer, our counselor. I would encourage them to see a teacher. And I would tell them the worst thing that lands on my plate is about the middle of May, when the school year is about over, and you have a parent show up in your office. They're upset that their child has been bullied all year long, and they're sick of it, and they're tired of it. And my response would often be, who has she told, or who has he told about bullying? And there'd be silence. They've not told a teacher. They've not been to the guidance counselor. A parent who has been aware of it all year has never called the school. And sometimes the response would be, well, I didn't want to because I didn't figure anything would happen. Or I didn't contact because they didn't want me to contact anybody. But sometimes kids are reluctant to report things that are happening at school, and as a result, if nobody knows about it, then nobody can intervene.
Right. Well, I want to go ahead and just ask you 3 more questions. Richard, if you had the money, the power, the authority to stop bullying in West Virginia, what changes would you make? If that means if you're able to take all the kids off social media, or anything, what changes would you actually make to improve or prevent bullying to get worse?
Well, I guess if I was king for a day, that's a really good question. But I just mentioned somewhat in detail the program that we had at Jackson to start each day, and if I had the power to make it happen, and I think a lot of schools do have these. But I think you really need to have positive team building programs in schools where all kids feel valued. Only throwing out negative consequences to students, I don't think that always works. Keep in mind that more often than not, bullies are people who have a poor self-esteem.
Right. And
if you can offer programs where they feel valued, I think more than negative consequences, that would have a big impact on the school.
Right.
I guess I'm telling my age, but even to this day, I still watch the Inspiration Channel, and I watch Little House on the Prairie.
I do too. And
and Nellie Olson and in that school system, that little one room school, bullying takes place all the time on those shows, and generally on those shows, the bully is the kid who comes from a rough family, a dysfunctional family sometimes, where they don't feel valued at school and what have you. So they bully other students because they have a poor self-concept themselves. And I think these programs do a lot to stop that.
Right.
And and that's really a program that doesn't cost a lot of money to implement. But as far as money goes, if the funding was there, I would like to see an additional counselor hired in schools. Our counselors are so overwhelmed right now. They have so much on their plate with the issues that are showing up in the hallways and things that students bring from their home, and I honestly don't know how they do it. And then you throw in the students who want to see the counselor having to do with social issues and bullying. It's all they can do to do that. I mean, they would have a line all the way down the door, the hallway, if it was possible. But no, to have an extra counselor to handle that would be a wonderful thing.
Right. One last question. I think we need your advice on this. What would you recommend for kids to do going from elementary to middle school? Because when you transition from elementary to middle school, if things aren't going right. I mean, a lot of new kids can get bullied, and the same thing where kids go from middle school to high school. What can parents do to prevent any bullying to take place at the beginning of school when, like I said, when their kids are going from elementary, middle, and the middle to high school? Does that make sense?
Oh, I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And when we get students from the elementary to middle, well, that is a dramatic change for the parent as well as the student. They are going from being in one classroom for the most part all day long with one teacher that they relate to. They might leave in elementary school to go to phys ed and some couple pullouts, but for the most part, they're in that classroom with that teacher. And if there's no class changes and if they do move, the teacher moves with them, they walk in single file. Then they get to middle school and there's class changes, the class sizes are larger. Parents need to understand that, there's going to be a lot of social issues. And like I mentioned, a lot of the things that happen in middle school is not bullying. It's just kids learning to interact. They're becoming phase one of becoming an adult, and there's things that they're going to have to work out, on their own.
Right.
And, parents need to give kids a chance to learn how to handle conflict.
Right.
They can't come to the school every time something happens that their son or daughter doesn't like. Right. And that's not necessarily even, bullying. I'm not talking about that, but give them a chance to learn how to adjust and solve issues on their own. And then as far as going from middle school to high school, my advice to students is always, you need to get involved in something.
Right.
And when I visit the elementary schools, when I do our orientation, I encourage the kids when they come to middle school. Middle school is about being social. Mm-hmm. Get involved, go to school dances, be on a sports team, be in band, be in choir, be in 1, 2, or even 3 clubs. Sign up for those things. Don't just come to school, be a student, and then go home, because again, it's very social in middle school. And in high school, it's been proven time and time again that kids who are involved in things appear to be happier. They feel better about themselves. Get involved in things at the high school level, and at that level, they're hit with all kinds of issues and things, and they're going to have to make a lot of decisions. And as a high school student, you need to make wise choices.
Right. You know what? I will say this is that when Landon went from Jackson to PHS, my wife went ahead and actually got him involved in playing football. And it was just it was perfect, because he started building relationships with the other football players and everything else. It was during the summer, and when school started, hey Landon, how you doing? And there was just that instant relationship. And I think what you're saying is so true. I think that the kids just need to be plugged into some type of organization, the chess team or whatever. And that's one of the advices that I have given to so many parents. They would ask me, what would you do? And I would just tell them that, get them involved in some type of program. Let me ask you this. Do you agree that you mentioned that kids, I think you said that bullies are individuals who have low self-esteem, but do you think that kids that get bullied also have low self-esteem?
No, I don't think having a low self-esteem has anything to do with actually getting bullied. No. Okay. I think that's just you're being more of a victim. You can have a great self-esteem and be bullied. Right. And I'm not saying that all bullies have a bad self-esteem, but statistically we know that a lot of them do.
Right.
No different than adults on social media. A lot of the people who are most unhappy themselves are the ones on Facebook criticizing other people and that sort of thing. If you're truly happy and you feel good about yourself, you're less likely to want to put somebody else down and cause somebody else some hardship.
Right. Well, what I want to go ahead and do, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. There's a thing what I ask super questions, and you can actually just answer this with short answers. And if you don't mind, let's go ahead and do this, and then we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
Okay. Let me see. I'm actually changing some of these questions, so this might be new to you. What was one word that best describes you?
One word that best describes me. I would say persistent.
Okay.
Not easily given up. Plugging ahead. Being goal-oriented. I'd say persistent.
Okay. What is one of your biggest pet peeves? Now, this can be pertaining to your family, school, anybody.
I don't know how many questions you're going to ask, but I guarantee you that's the easiest one for me to answer. And I'm 100% sure if you went to Jackson Middle School and said, what was Mr. Summers' biggest pet peeve, they would say people who are not on time. People who can't look at a clock, people who can't make it to an after-school meeting, people who can't make it to the hair appointment, just people who aren't on time.
You know, I met your wife a couple of times because I did a couple of assemblies where she was at. Now,
that's true.
Now, is she always on time?
Always on time. and I could talk for hours on that, but
okay.
Yeah, she's on time. Trust me.
Okay. What natural gift would you most like to possess?
Well, probably. I know when you've done our assemblies and things, and I see how talented you are, and how much work you've put in your profession, and I guess I would say to be able to use a musical instrument or to be able to use my voice or to be musically talented. I would love to have I love music. I can't sing. I can't play. I'd love to be musically talented.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Well, let me ask you this. Now, you mentioned the Little House on the Prairie. Now, I have to tell you, I wouldn't tell too many people that I like watching Little House on the Prairie, but before I would go to train, I do a lot of jiu-jitsu. Before I would go train, I would actually watch Little House on the Prairie. So that's one of my favorite shows. So that being said, what is one of your favorite bands that you don't want anybody to know of?
Well, I don't know about not wanting anybody to know about, but anybody who knows me knows that my favorite band is Journey. We would have meetings at school. And sometimes the teacher who was hosting the meeting, we'd start off with "Don't Stop Believin'." I coach high school volleyball. Every kid can sing "Don't Stop Believin'." Okay. I would walk into the choir room at school some days, and I'd tell Miss Elodie, our wonderful choir director, it's been a bad day. Kids would sing "Don't Stop Believin'." I love Journey. I love Journey.
Okay. You know what? I honestly follow Journey, and when Steve Perry left, and I'm not for sure why. Do you have any idea why he left? Was it he had back issues, or was it more just a bunch of drama?
I don't know. It seems to me like there's one thing certain in life, and that is every great rock band is eventually going to have a breakup. And I don't know. I assume they probably had a disagreement over something. I don't know.
You know what, Richard? Let me tell you this. I get a lot of information about bands. There was a band that was really on the charts all the time. It was called Guns N' Roses, and this band had, and I'm finding out that a lot of bands have this, but this band had I'm not for sure if it was a psychiatrist, but a counselor that traveled full-time with them to keep everything settled down, because of all the arguments and everything else. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I was not aware of that.
Oh, I know.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah. And then, you know what? And here we are. We have, like what you were saying, we have counselors, one or two counselors in a school of 400 to 600 people, or even more.
Right.
So.
Right.
Okay, one last question. Tell me something true that almost nobody agrees with you on.
that I'm flexible. I feel like I'm flexible with a lot of things, but people who know me probably would say there's no way. He's very not. He's certainly not flexible, but I think that I am.
Well, that's awesome. Well, listen, let's go ahead and wrap things up. I really do appreciate you being on the show, Richard, and actually you were really the first principal to be on the show that was really active and just recently retired. So I really do appreciate it. I honestly, when I sent you those questions, I wasn't for sure if you were going to go ahead and for some reason cancel or postpone. So, but that being said, well, that's about all we have for the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells. Before we go, I want you to know that there's ways that you can help me fight against bullying. As I mentioned before in the previous podcast, you can share the show with Richard Summers on social media, Facebook page, Instagram, and this is one way that we can bring awareness against bullying. Now, secondly, if you haven't subscribed to the Bully Resistance Show, it doesn't cost you anything. Just go to my website at www.davebond.org, and then thirdly, you can be a monthly supporter as low as $5 per month, which is just one specialty coffee at Starbucks. And in return, you can actually receive Song of the Week and a digital download CD of the month. And all you have to do is just go on my website at www.davebond.org and click on the Patreon banner. And so until next time, thanks for listening.